don't know if you want to ask questions of each other, or Tom, if you want to make a countervening statement, and then Kathy can do the same, and then we'll, or if you want to talk, if you want to question each other on specific points. So I'll let this kind of be free for all a little bit, not too much. But Tom, if you want to ask a question or two, or just make a statement or counterpoint some of those points.
Well, there's a lot of terms going back and forth. I believe Article 5 was put in because the framers, the founders, understood what a convention of the states was. Madison, when he was talking, was if we don't do the Bill of Rights, the states are going to come together and they're going to say we need a new constitution to put in the Bill of Rights. So by God, we better get off our butt and do it. And so he petitioned the states, got hundreds and hundreds of examples, summarized them, came up with, I forget the number, 35 or whatever, 12 passed. They went for ratification to the states, a process we can't leave out. Even the Constitutional Convention was ratified by the states when they called for ratification. They didn't call if it was going to be, they didn't call if they were going to accept it, but they set up the groundwork for people to appoint commissioners to go and discuss whether or not they should ratify the Constitution. North Carolina held out until it became obvious that the Bill of Rights was going to be made. Now I look at where we are today. We can go banter back and forth. Nullification was tried. I think we lost 700,000 people. I don't know how we get everybody to nullify all of the things that are unconstitutional. That's very difficult. There's so many. I mean, what is it, 100,000 pages that need to be nullified? How do you do that? And how do we make sure that everybody does it so some of us don't go to jail before other people? The only way is what George Mason said, when the whole society gets so corrupt. This is the only thing. Do I trust the people in California? No, except they did give us Reagan. Okay, forget that. All right, do I trust the people from Massachusetts? No, but do I trust South Carolina and North Carolina and Texas and Alabama and some of those? Yes. Do I believe there are 14 states that will come up under a convention? Yes. Now, as far as Article 1, Section 8, the framers knew what they were talking about. They had a 2-day debate on that article, because Governor Morris, when he was writing it up, put a semicolon in instead of a comma. Then the semicolon was, you can raise as much money as you want in taxes, and then the new sentence, you can pay bills. The comma said you had to do both. They had a 2-day discussion. They knew what they were talking about when they put down the articles. So my question is, how do we fix something? We're kind of running out of time. And Article 5, Convention of the States, is going to take 5-7 years. That's going to be a lot of publicity, a lot of talk. A lot of things are going to get said, some good, some bad. But it's an educational process. It's moving forward under the guise of the Constitution as authorized. Everybody says, why would Washington listen to us? I don't know. But it's better in a revolution. Because if we go to nullification, that's basically what we're getting. They tried that once. It didn't work.
Actually, it's been tried in many states and very successfully.
It has. It's been tried.
And frankly, the nullification that you're referring to, the Civil War, that was a failure of Congress to eliminate slavery, and in fact the expansion of slavery was never a power allocated to the federal government. So all of those laws that they passed from 1808 until the Civil War started expanding slavery was a usurpation of power not granted by itself.
That's right. And the Supreme Court, Justice Taney, said it was legal. That's the problem. And that's why we need to have this, because states should have a right that if 3/4 of the states or 66% of the states say Obamacare is wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah. But the states have that right. It is called nullification.
The word nullification is not in this document. I've read it a bunch of times.
The word nullification is not in that document.
But Article 5, Convention of the States is.
As you said, this is a confederation of dual sovereignty.
It's no longer a confederation of dual sovereignty. It's a republic. It is a republic, and we're guaranteed 50 republics plus the national republic. It's not a confederation anymore.
There is still dual sovereignty. The states have sovereignty within their borders, the federal government was given power
They don't
only...
anymore.
Well, the states are complicit. They have sold us out for federal money. States...
They've sold us out to get their money back.
Hang on, Tom.
Well, if they just
I'm sorry.
didn't send it in the first place. But the states
This is
now
okay.
get a third of their money
It's good hammer and tongs.
from the federal government. They have sold us out because it gives them an illusion of more power, more control, growing government, and this is another example of how we, the people, because we don't know the Constitution, have fallen down on the job, and we've let the states get away with it. However, to go back to nullification as a term does exist in Madison's other writings, not within the body of the Constitution itself, but it has been used by many states over many instances. Medical marijuana is only the most recent example. The national ID card that Bush tried to push in the early 2000s after 9/11, the states functionally nullified that by basically saying, we're not playing that game. We will not comply. That is what nullification is. When the federal government usurps power and passes a law that is beyond the scope of power they were given by the Constitution, which created the federal government. It didn't create the state governments, it created the federal government. It is the duty of the states to say, you do not have the power under the Constitution to do that. We're not playing your game. Now you had a
Just Arizona tried to enforce border
Selma,
laws,
Alabama.
and they got sued by the
Little Rock,
Well,
Arkansas.
and here's an example of how far we've come from understanding the Constitution. The federal government brought suit against Arizona for the crime of enforcing federal regulations that the feds weren't enforcing, right? They sued in Arizona court. In Article 3, it says, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction, and not one of them, not the judge, not the Arizona lawyers, not the federal lawyers, were able to say, wait a minute, we're in the wrong courthouse. Arizona's lawyers should have stood up and said, Judge, I move to dismiss because under Article 3, you do not have jurisdiction to hear this case. And the judge would have no recourse except to say, case dismissed.
Okay.
That's how far we have deteriorated, but that's not a flaw in the Constitution. That's a flaw in us.
Is there any reason at all to ever amend the Constitution?
Of course there is.
Really? How do we do that when we have a corrupt body that is not going to decrease their power? How do you do that? How do you amend the Constitution if you've got a corrupt... Hal must have prepped her on this answer. Go ahead. How do you do that? What do we do? Because I'm of the opinion, number one, I don't like when you say that we get our money from the federal government. They don't. They get their money out of my wallet.
They think they get their money.
No, they know where they're... We need to correct people. They get it from my wallet and everybody else that works wallets.
Some states pay
That's
more
where the
than
money
others.
comes from. But
And a bunch of it stays in D.C. in various pockets.
most of it stays in D.C., but that's besides the point. We are at a threshold now with 18 trillion going on 19 where I can look at my young grandkids and I can go, you're screwed. Period. That's it. We can sit around and we can nullify, we can try to get states together. We need to have conventions to talk about nullification.
No, we
We
don't.
better do something. If you don't get all 50 states acting in cohort, then you're going to have Selma, Alabama, you're going to have Little Rock, Arkansas,
That
you're
hasn't
going to have
happened with
Phoenix, you're
medical
going to have...
marijuana, has it? And that's only been 13.
Can I ask a question?
What does medical marijuana have to do with the frickin' Constitution?
It's an example of nullification in action, even here in liberal
I'd like to-
Massachusetts.
Explain
That's
that to
all.
me.
I'd like
What?
Explain it to me.
Could you explain nullification?
Nullification is when a state says, federal government, you have usurped power, you have no right to make rules in this area, the Constitution does not give you the power to do that. So within the borders of our state, we are saying, go play someplace else. We are not complying with this regulation or this law that you had no power to pass in the first place.
From a beyond like social issues like gay marriage and things like that are playing out, from a practical perspective, from limiting the leviathan size of the federal government, fraud, waste, and abuse at the epic levels, unimaginable levels, has there been any example of nullification that has actually cut the size or stayed the same the size of the federal government or level decides.
Well, it-
That's kind of the issue at hand. The social issues, I think, will
Can I
come
comment
into
here one? 10 minutes, and the Supreme Court squashed that. In other words, your point is right. States tried to implement term limits on their respective centers.
On their respective centers, right.
And the Supreme Court said they couldn't do it.
So I think we're peeling this back to the fundamental issues that are plaguing the generations to come, which is the $100+ trillion of unfunded liabilities, the federal debt spiraling out of control in front of our eyes. To me, unless you find a solution to the problem, everything else is a wash. All the other social issues, gay marriage and blah, 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 and free contraception, and even Obamacare is a wash. So how do you address that one top issue?
Can we just go back to nullification for a moment? What teeth does nullification have? After we talk as though it has teeth, and this gentleman's suggesting it doesn't have any teeth, I guess.
Well, it does have teeth if we have states that have the gumption to nullify and to stick by it. For example, Colorado passed a law before the Democrats all took over. They passed a law saying any federal tax money has to go to a central account here in Colorado before it goes off to the federal government. They've never implemented it. But if they implemented that, then anytime the feds then try to turn around and punish them for non-compliance by saying, well, we'll withhold your federal highway money, then the Colorado will then say, well, we're not sending it to you in the first place.
Is that nullification?
That is nullification.
But see, how does that
non-compliant,
change?
and that is refusal.
How does that change how the federal government works with the other 49 states? Hurrah for Colorado. Hurrah for Massachusetts that you can get any doctor to say it's okay to smoke pot. You gotta love Massachusetts. But so what? How does that fix the problem that our grandkids, the debt, the size, the number of regulations that come out every day, the fact that the Supreme Court comes and rules on a 5-4, 5 people, God bless them, they give great dinners and stuff, and they now dictate to 325 million people what the heck they're going to do.
Well, see, there's an error. Nowhere in the
How do you fix
Constitution,
it?
nowhere in the
It
Constitution
doesn't matter.
does it say that the Supreme Court is the sole arbiter
Yes.
of
Yes,
what
it
is
does. It
No,
started,
it does not.
if you read the
No.
Federalist Papers.
She's right. She's
No,
right.
no. It was from the Marbury versus Madison decision in 1803, where the first question they had to solve was whether or not what they had been asked to rule on was a constitutional decision where they had jurisdiction. And that's where it all came from. There is no place in Article 3 does it say that the Supreme Court is the sole and final arbiter. That's
So
nuts.
how do you-
The federal
how do
government
you-
is created by the Constitution.
Why else does
So,
everybody else have to swear oaths?
The federal government, a branch of the federal government, has no standing to decide on the terms that create it.
That's fine, but still, it
And if we
doesn't solve the problem
It doesn't,
that the
it isn't a
Supreme
magic wand
Court.
to solve the problem. What
Yes,
solves
it
the problem
is.
is when the people
do,
understand.
if you do, if the people can understand all they want, but they're still going to go to jail if they disobey what the Supreme Court says.